Hello and welcome to Easy Piecy Quilts. Today we're going to be doing an Easter quilt called Easter Garden Gatherings. It has adorable little rabbits, carrots, baskets, all ready for the Easter celebration. This quilt pattern shows you how to make 3 different sizes. One is a crib, and I thought the crib quilt would look super cute with just rabbits. You could make it more for a boy, more for a girl. You could make it gender neutral, and it would be really adorable that way. The other component of the quilt is strip pieced. So it really is a fast quilt to put together. I'm going to show you how to do the applique, which are the rabbits and the carrots and the baskets. So that I think is really fun, fast, and easy. So let's go ahead and get started making this Easter quilt. Comes with 2 pages of templates, one for the carrot, the little carrot top, the basket, and then you have 2 bunnies. When you use heat and bond, like we're going to use it, when you trace a bunny, you'll actually get the mirror image of that rabbit on the actual fabric that you put on the block, which isn't a big deal, but just something to keep in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and take one of these rabbits and cut him out, and we'll use him as an example of how to do the applique. The other thing I've done is I've prepared my fabric by pressing heat and bond on the back side of this fabric, and what that does is it will give you a paper side, and then it will adhere glue to your fabric, and that was going to allow us to put this piece of fabric on our background piece and hold it nice and snug and where we want it, so that we can stitch our rabbit down and make it a permanent part of our quilt. So again, I'm just going to cut out the rabbit, and then we'll trace him on the heat and bond, and we'll reconvene. We've got our bunny cut out. I went ahead and traced him on the heat and bond, and now I'm going to cut him out of the fabric. Here is our bunny with the heat and bond cut out. We can remove the heat and bond, but first notice again what I was kind of alluding to earlier. We trace the bunny and he's going this way, but when we remove the heat and bond and to reveal the glue on the back of this fabric, he's going to be facing the other way, which isn't a big deal, but I put bunnies going both directions on my quilt, so if you're kind of keeping track of that, you'll just want to know that. But I eyeballed centering this bunny. I didn't get too crazy with it, and he looks pretty good there. So I am just going to press him onto the background square. I guess I probably shouldn't have steam. They say to use a dry iron with the heat and bond. Alright, and that's all there is to it. This bunny is attached to the back fabric. So let's stitch him down. Let's go over to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to put a couple of decorative stitches around him and make him a little bit cuter. You can use any variety of threads you would like for this. You could use a light thread like this and that would certainly blend in really well. I'm going to be using a dark brown thread for this rabbit, mostly because I want him to show up a little bit more, and I also want you to be able to see the stitching. So it would be really easy to go around this rabbit with just a straight stitch, and I think that that would look really pretty. Simplicity to me is really beautiful. I have a walking, or not a walking foot, I have a wide-toed presser foot on my machine, just so I can see where the needle's hitting the applique, and I feel like I can control my stitching a little bit better that way. So start wherever you would like on the rabbit. It does not matter, wherever you're more comfortable, and just start stitching. And just go around and just guide the fabric around the rabbit. And if you have to pick up and turn a little bit, that's totally fine too. And just kind of go around, pick a distance you want to be from the edge of the rabbit, and just kind of try and maintain that same distance all the way around the rabbit. So there is one option, would just be straight stitching, which would be really pretty, and it would, like I said, it would define that rabbit a little bit more, because he's a very similar color to the background, which is a pretty subtle color combination, but that would make him pop a little bit more. I also really love a zigzag stitch, so let's do a little bit of zigzag stitch, and I'm going to just manually bring my needle up, because I don't know exactly where he's going to land, just starting this right in the middle of the bunny. There we go. So what I like to do when I do a zigzag stitch on applique is I make sure that my needle goes right on the outside of the applique, and then when it's going towards the left, it's hitting the applique that way. So we're just moving around his little tail, and I think this adds a little bit of fun and whimsy to the quilt when there's a zigzag stitch. Just kind of go around the whole silhouette all the way around. And then when you turn, so that is, it would be a little zigzag stitch on the bunny. And then the other stitch I really like is a blanket stitch. Let me see if let's do that one. So again, I'm just going to take the wheel here and kind of manually do this on the first one, because I don't know exactly where it's going to land. There we go. All right. So this is a blanket stitch, and the way I do that is I just run my needle right along the edge of the applique, and then every second or third stitch it will go up onto the applique and grab the fabric, and it will adhere the applique to the background. And then you just take a turn and keep going. And you can do that all the way around the bunny too. So there is the blanket stitch on the edge. So just play around with some general different stitches, see which one you like for your quilt, and have some fun. I was just looking at this and I realized that his tail looks really cute in that zigzag. It makes it look like he has a little cotton ball tail. So you could even combine some of these stitches on your bunny, which would be really fun. The rest of the quilt is strip pieced, and you will make two different strip pieces. You will make a background, I called this the sashing fabric background strip, and then you will do a sashing background sashing strip. So they're essentially opposite. These are just partial strips. Typically you'll take an entire width of fabric when you're cutting yardage and sew the whole strip together. So these strips will be about 42 to 45 inches wide. And the great thing about this is you can cut these so quickly. So our 9-patch block in the corners are made from these strip pieces, and so is the sashing. So really, this is the biggest part of the construction of the quilt other than just assembling the quilt top. So with strip piecing, the one thing that is tricky is you absolutely have to use an accurate seam allowance, because if you don't, your strip piecing will be a lot wider than it is supposed to be. So this strip piece is supposed to be 3.5 inches wide, which we've got pretty darn close on that one. And we've got pretty darn close on this one. So that's great. So I would definitely check that. Make sure that your strips are wide, you know, like 3.5 inches wide like they're supposed to be, or everything gets kind of wonky pretty quick. So we are going to trim this to make our 9-patch. We are going to use 2 of these strip pieces. So let's trim off the end and even up all our strips first. And then we need 2 pieces off of this to make our 9-patch. And we need 1 off of this strip piece. Now this strip piece will also be all of our sashing. So we will use a lot more of these pieced pieces than we will of these. But I'll show you that when we look at the overall quilt top. So here we are with this. So now we will put this in the middle. This will go on the top. This will go on the bottom. And we've got our 9-patch piecing. And we can cut these off really quickly and make all the pieces that we need for the 9-patch. So you'll also notice that when I pressed these, I pressed toward the sashing or the darker fabric on both of these. So it's both are pressed in that direction, so that when we piece the 9-patch blocks, our seams will be going in different directions and they will nest. And that will be nice to keep everything lined up. So again, those seams are going in opposite directions that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew this seam and this seam to make our 9-patch. Here's our 9-patch, and I pressed my seams out when I pressed the back of this. Normally I would press them open, but I always press seams so that I can nest them. So you'll notice that these seams from previous, the strip piecing seams was pressed towards the darker fabric. We want to press these out as well, both sides. And the reason for that is you have this sashing strip is going to connect with this cornerstone on all sides. So you are going to have the sashing strip coming in here, coming in here, coming in here, and coming in here. And so if you press your seams like that, you will get seams that are going in the opposite directions right here and here, and it will make it really easy to line up your sashing, line up your piecing, and line up your quilt top. So I used a pretty dense quilting design on this quilt, and a couple of reasons. One is I feel like when you use applique, especially raw edge applique, the denser the quilting you have, the more areas it kind of adheres it to the background fabric, and it makes it a little bit more secure. And I thought that this feathered pattern was really pretty. And you can see right here, we've got our 9-patch that we made. And here are the sashing pieces. You can see going around the basket. So there are the components that we strip pieced, and then it has a border on it, which is pretty easy. You put the sides on and then the top and bottom border. So there is the basket. Here we've got a little rabbit, which I did zigzag stitching around my applique on this quilt. And then here is a carrot, which I think are so cute, and a rabbit. And you could see how if you did a quilt for a nursery or something like that, if you just wanted to use the rabbits, you could choose your fabrics to correspond to whatever gender that you wanted for your quilt to be made with. But here's green and all these fabrics, and I do have the fat quarter bundle, at least as of now, of these fabrics in my shop, and I'll link that in the description box as well. One more kind of nitpicky little thing. When I sewed my carrots on, I put my little carrot top over my carrot body, but in my pattern, when I put the diagrams in, I am almost positive, thinking back, that I tucked the carrot top underneath the carrot. So you can do it either way. I glued the fabric down all at once. So I put these two pieces on, and then I stitched around here, and then I stitched around the top. You could just put the carrot body on, stitch around it, and then put the carrot top on, and then stitch around that. However you want to do it. There's really no right or wrong way. I had fun making this quilt Easter garden gathering with you. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll be back again soon with a new quilt project.